One in a Million is a PowerPoint-based training package that has been developed to meet the learning competencies for informed dementia training as outlined in the Good Work Framework. This video guide has been created by dementia trainers for dementia trainers across Wales to help support you to continue to deliver training in a COVID-19 world. By putting together some information about virtual training and sharing a few of our own experiences, we hope that you'll be better able and more confident to facilitate your own virtual online training. You should already be familiar with the existing training materials, which are freely available from Social Care Wales. Our aim here is to illustrate how that material can be easily adapted for use in a virtual delivery platform such as Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, Jitsi Meet, and a host of other similar applications. While there are many different virtual conferencing applications, they all operate in a similar way, and with a little bit of research online, you can decide which app is most suitable to meet your needs. For the purposes of this video, we will be using Zoom. But before we continue, we are obliged to remind you of the legal terms. Hi, Anna.
Oh, hi, Sarah. Thanks for agreeing to help me out. I've been really struggling over this.
Oh, well, look, you're not alone, so don't worry. We've all needed to adapt to new ways of doing things, and I know how daunting the idea of delivering online training can be when you've only been used to doing it in a face-to-face environment.
Yeah, of course. I mean, pandemic or no pandemic, we still need to raise dementia awareness.
Exactly, and we still need to deliver training against the Good Work Framework. Online training shouldn't be seen as an obstacle, but more as an opportunity to expand skills. I think most facilitators just find it hard to know where to start and how to make the best connections with people in a virtual environment.
Oh, that would be me. I mean, I've had a bit of experience using Microsoft Teams, and obviously I'm on Zoom with you now, but it's really only been as a participant in meetings.
I know what you mean. When I first started out, it was the same, but I hosted a few quizzes for my family online, and just doing that helped me to really understand how the software works.
Oh, I've never thought of it like that.
Even for people who've had zero experience of online interactions, there are a lot of videos on YouTube, and I even know some local organisations that offer free training.
Yes, there's probably a lot more resources out there than I realised to help people get started.
Yeah, there are, but I think that one of the things that frightens first-timers is there are so many applications to choose from, and even some workplaces are very specific about the app they have to use. So not everyone uses Zoom or Teams. Most times, though, choice of platform is down to personal preference of the trainer.
What about security issues? I've heard that can be a problem.
Yeah, a lot of those issues were early on, but since the pandemic started, many steps have been taken by most app developers to make their virtual environments more secure. So if you have access to a business or pro version of these apps, then even better, because that ensures that safety and security features are then at a maximum.
I've been told that some people haven't been able to download certain platforms if they are using a workplace device.
That can happen, and that in itself can be the first thing to stop people from attending an online session. In most cases, if they can't download the app itself, they can still join in by clicking on a link that the facilitator sent out in an email invitation just before the start of the meeting. The link will open up the online session in the user's own internet browser, whether they use Google Chrome or Safari or something else. So in fact, they don't really need to download anything to be involved, though you may wish to ask them to register with you before the session so that you know that they will be attending.
When you put it that way, joining an online training session sounds as easy as browsing the web.
If they are inexperienced, then that is the best way to get them involved. For those with more technical understanding, having the downloaded app can provide them with additional benefits, such as automatically putting the meeting into their calendars. But whatever platform you end up choosing, you should try it out first to become familiar with it. And remember, not everyone will be seeing it the way you do. You may be on the app itself, but they may be on a browser or even joining in from their mobiles. So their experience of the session may be a little different. The more comfortable you are with it, the easier it will be for you to support others if they're having problems.
Sounds like I should host a family quiz as well then.
It's all good practice for your online skills.
I suppose I could also include a list of top tips in the email invitation, to help ease them into an online environment and to give them a sense of what to expect. And the last thing anyone needs during a 1 in a million session is to be worried about their technical skills.
You could also include a few images or step-by-step screenshots to help illustrate how they go about joining a session. I find people understand things better if there are graphic examples rather than just words. And you don't need to brush up on your Photoshop skills either. There's loads of online resources that you can link participants to. You can also arrange to do a short test session with them before the actual training.
What do you mean?
Well, if you know you're going to have several people new to virtual meetings, it might be a good idea to run a session where you simply get them familiar with the interface and the way an online meeting works. Take that opportunity then to answer all their technical questions, going over the basics of the app, such as changing their screen name or even what a breakout room is. Additionally, you'll be able to connect with them in advance, get to know them a bit more, and make them feel more comfortable with each other. You could end the session by discussing some pre-course information, sharing some handouts, verifying the date and time of the training. It's all about reassuring them, really, while still providing them with all the information they'll need for the actual training.
And if they don't need a practice session, I could just include all that information in the email invitation, though I see that a practice session can be an opportunity for them to get to know each other a bit.
Oh yeah, and beneficial for you as the trainer as well. When I did face-to-face training, I was always in the classroom early to make sure everything was ready, and I stayed after the session if people had questions or needed a bit of extra support.
Yes, I'm like that as well.
So why should the virtual environment be any different? The test session will allow you to connect with participants and get them familiar with the way in which you will deliver the training. You can make sure everyone feels comfortable in the virtual space, even if they're joining in from their kitchen. Make sure people know they can have a drink at hand and that you will suggest a break when needed. And Zoom, for example, has many tools to help you, such as one-to-one private text chats that participants can access if they need to. Show them how to end the session on their own. That way, anyone wishing to stay on after the rest have left can discuss any issues they may have. And definitely talk about the Chatham House rule.
What's that?
Basically, it's a rule used around the world, but especially perfect for online meetings that helps to create a trusted environment. The rule encourages open and frank discussion and allows participants to express opinions that may not necessarily be those of the organisation. By encouraging honest dialogue in a safe space, people will feel free to say whatever they think or feel. And whilst information from the discussion can be used outside of the session, it cannot be attributed to any individual.
I can see that by doing it this way, I'll have done everything I can to help participants feel as comfortable as possible in an environment that may be new to them.
Everyone is different, and as long as you're sensitive to that fact, I'm sure you'll be able to make the virtual learning space as ideal as possible for them. You may also be delivering 1 in a million on your own or with another facilitator. And if you're working with someone else, coordinate with them ahead of time and follow up afterwards. Remember that you already possess effective training skills, so just as with classroom sessions, always look at the course evaluations or feedback and take the time later to reflect on what you can do to make the next session better for both you and the participants.
I suppose I could also start the session or open the room ahead of time for those who are a little early. I know I've been in situations where I've been sat in a waiting room and I've been completely unsure whether I'm in the right place.
Oh, you could put up a greeting in the waiting room to reassure people that they are where they should be and that you'll be starting the session shortly. If the app accepts a graphic or a logo as well, that could also help to identify the session to any early arrivals.
So what about the actual running of the session? Any tips on how to handle the conversations? I'm concerned that those who are more comfortable on camera will be the only ones offering up any discussions.
Oh, this is common with all online meetings. Some people are always actively involved, while others prefer to sit back and just watch. You can't force people to participate, but there are things that you can do to help get them involved. Many platforms have built-in reaction emojis that participants can use to signal their agreements or intentions. And this is usually referred to as non-verbal feedback and includes icons that many will be familiar with from social media applications, such as Facebook. For example, you could ask a question and all the participants could react by giving you a thumbs up if they agree. In Zoom, these reactions stay on screen for 5 seconds. As well, participants who wish to say something but might not be able to get a word in can click on the raise hand button, after which you can call upon them to speak. Just remember, if you wish to use these reactions, you must enable them in the meeting session ahead of time.
I suppose if I was presenting this with a colleague, they could monitor the reactions and feedback and can initiate a private chat with someone if there are any real problems.
Oh, sure. That chat can be directed to everyone, like if you're sharing a document, for example, or it can be directed to a specific participant through a private chat. Participants can also leave questions or comments in the chat for your consideration, or they may wish to expand upon a raised point without expressing it verbally.
Now that sounds quite handy. If I'm able to monitor the chat, I could react to it as we go along, or if, for example, I'm delivering the training alone, I could tell everyone that I'll read the chat during the break and then address anything significant when we resume. I mean, I wouldn't want the chat to become too distracting though, so perhaps it would be best to set some ground rules from the start.
Oh, definitely. After all, you don't want people sending each other a load of private chats discussing off-topic things like the wallpaper in your home, where they should be focused on the training session itself. Another way of gathering feedback would be to use an online tool like Mentimeter. Instead of emojis, Mentimeter offers a more interactive and entertaining approach through the use of live quizzes or polls, word cloud creations, and more. Participants can use their mobiles or their internet browser alongside your platform app to give live feedback. It takes a little bit of setting up ahead of time, and there is a cost as it is a third-party tool, but it can be very effective in encouraging participation and engagement.
That sounds a little more involved for me to begin with, but it might be great once I'm feeling more confident about delivering training online.
Okay, well, Zoom, as well as some other apps, has a built-in polling capability. Again, you might need to set it up ahead of time, but it can still be an effective tool to gather more complex feedback.
Tell me more about the breakout rooms and how I can use them.
Well, for people who find Zoom meeting already quite intimidating, staring at a sea of heads and shoulders can make it near impossible to get anything out of them. Breakout rooms could be the answer because they provide a space for smaller groups to be more focused on a given topic, and everyone has more opportunity to contribute. I find a breakout room group size of 2 to 5 people works best, depending upon how many overall participants you have, small enough to involve them, but large enough to bat ideas around.
So I could, for example, split them into breakout rooms and say, in this 15-minute breakout session, spend 5 minutes discussing a topic, 5 minutes coming up with solutions, and then 5 minutes organising your discussion into something you can feed back to the main group. And while they are doing that, I could be reading the chat from earlier or discussing any issues with my colleague.
You can also visit each of the breakout rooms in turn to see how things are going, offer any assistance, or stimulate discussion if the group is having difficulties, including staying on topic. Just remember, though, that while they are in the breakout rooms, they won't have access to the main meeting room or screen share. So if they will need to reference something you've been showing them, have them snap a photo of it on their mobiles, write it down, or provide it as a handout before they break out. You can broadcast a message that will pop up on their breakout screens, along with a countdown at 1 or 2 minutes before you wish them to return to the main space. This gives them the chance to wrap up discussion, and once the countdown ends, they'll automatically return to the main room. They also have manual options of returning, so make sure you're in the main room when you send out the broadcast.
I was thinking that a breakout room might be the perfect place for an icebreaker activity, because in a larger group, it might be too complicated to organise. In the classroom, I've used an accomplished goals activity, and I'm thinking it wouldn't be a stretch to adapt it to the virtual environment. I like it because of its positive focus, specifically on a person's achievements. And while the initial goals might be completely different, some people might find that they are also interested in achieving the same goal that another person in the group has achieved. So if it were me, I might say, hello, I'm Anna, and this week I hosted my first Zoom quiz. That could then inspire someone else to want to do the same. And a discussion could arise around how achieving that goal would make them feel, or where they could go from there. In terms of dementia awareness, I could say, hello, I'm Anna, and my nana had vascular dementia, in order to bring up a specific topic related to the training.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd have to be aware that some people might not welcome, of course, a discussion around a difficult topic in the same way that they might about an achievement. Dementia is a very emotive subject, and some participants may already be struggling with deep emotions by even attending the online training.
That's true. I think that face to face, it is easier to recognize when a person is struggling, and it may be more of a challenge to do so in a virtual space. I suppose I'd have to pay more attention to body language, how individuals are reacting to the session and behaving overall. A poll that would enable me to check in with people from time to time would be a really useful tool. And I could also see the benefit of using the chat as a way for participants to share their thoughts without distracting from the main session.
Yeah. You may want to have some information to hand in order to signpost people for further support if necessary. Try to treat the virtual environment the way you do in the classroom. As a facilitator, you will need to decide how best to deliver 1 in a million in a virtual world in a way that meets your participants' needs.
In terms of specific elements of 1 in a million, can we take a look at a few examples of how I might deliver that content through a platform like Zoom?
First off, there is no correct way to deliver training online. All I can do is offer suggestions. Aside from the specific learning objectives found in the knowledge pack, how you choose to illustrate it in an online environment is pretty much up to you. But the more creative you are able to be, the more enriching the experience will be for your participants.
I'm getting that.
Well, if you don't do a test session, the first slide of the 1 in a million presentation is the most obvious place to welcome everyone and go through your general housekeeping and ground rules. Cover everything we talked about earlier, from the Chatham House rule to the general expectations of breakout rooms, the rules around the chats, and when you will set the appropriate time for a break. You'll probably want participants to introduce themselves as well, but how you choose to do this will depend on how well the group knows each other and, of course, the overall size of the group. You could save introductions until the first breakout session, but know when to utilise the breakout rooms effectively. Going in and out of them every 5 minutes can prove counterproductive when the aim should be about achieving a balance of different methods of engagement. For example, there are many different ways you could engage participants when the question, "What do you see?" is posed when looking at a particular image. People could type an answer in the chat, shout out an answer, or they could write down a word and hold it up to the camera. You could even use a tool like Mentimeter to help create a word cloud or a poll.
In some cases, a simple yes or no poll could work. Or I could make a more complex one depending upon the direction I want to go. I suppose I could ask for a reaction from people to indicate whether they've heard of the expressions listed on the slides, or they could indicate through emojis whether they agree those terms are acceptable or not. If I wanted to further explore someone's response in more detail, I could directly ask 1 or 2 of the participants to expand upon their responses.
A short 5-minute breakout session could also work well here if the goal is to encourage discussion and then feed thoughts and ideas back to the main group. Or you just may want to simply linger on the slide to give participants time to reflect on the question and then move on. Sometimes a simple and straightforward approach works best, but as you can see, in terms of engagement, you have lots of options.
Yes, I can see how a word cloud, for example, would be an incredibly effective way of illustrating types of dementia. And I think that if a particular slide has been designed as a conversation starter, or could be better considered from a personal perspective, a breakout room might offer up the most value.
Yeah, sometimes the goal is not dependent on sharing answers with the group. For example, having people take a moment to think about who or what is important to them and then writing it down for themselves can be powerful enough. These slides, for example, are designed to introduce the idea that we can do things differently to support effective communication. As we discussed before, there are many ways to engage participants, verbally, in the chat, or even a thumbs up reaction. In order to capture opinions on whether the environment influences the lived experience of dementia, in this slide, you could conduct a poll, the answers of which you could show after the run of slides. This slide, for example, is designed to encourage conversation about activities or hobbies that are important to the person. You could ask, "What do you see?" and perhaps create a word cloud of responses. It would feel more current to link this to lockdown and the favoured activities that they've not been able to do, or the people they've not been able to see in order to explore how it made them feel. This can be done either in a large group or in a smaller breakout room. But linking it back to dementia, you could then ask how it would feel if they could never do that activity again, or if they would want someone to support them to try. Close with final thoughts, take-home messages, and have them consider and even verbally share the one thing that they will now do differently as a result of the training.
I think this has given me a lot to consider, and you're right. There are so many different ways I can engage with participants online to deliver 1 in a million effectively.
Oh, I'm glad you're feeling more confident, Anna. And here's to a successful first online training session.